GM, welcome to morning markets. We've had a bunch of volatility, so let me drop you another emergency update. Now, looking at the low time frames in this video, Bitcoin has been in this range here. So taking the volume profile of the range, you can see the value area high and the value area low, which shows where 70% of the volume was traded. That means 70% of the buying and selling was done between around 111 and 119. So what do you see here? Well, you have an attempt to break out from that volume profile area. You have another attempt to break out, and as soon as price falls back in the value area high, it leads to a move to the other side of the range. And same to the flip side. You try to break down, but as soon as you reclaim, that leads to a move to the POC on this example, so the point of control where the most volume was traded. And on this example leads a move to the other side of the range. So for all the bearishness, and don't get me wrong, high time frame, monthly chart, weekly charts do look bearish on Bitcoin. We can see that we are in a range here still. We haven't actually broken down from the range. So let's dive into that further and see what we can expect in the coming weeks ahead. So pulling up a fresh chart here. Simple view. We tried to break above the high, false breakout led to a flush. But by the same regard, got to keep it objective, we tried to break below the low. Again, false breakout, couldn't do it. So to confirm this range as a distribution, you actually need to see daily closes below 107.2k. That confirms, yes, this is bearish. Yes, we are going lower. Now, again, it doesn't mean you can't protect your portfolio like I did at 121k here, went into cash in August. Doesn't mean you can't still stay safe in the market essentially and be risk off. However, it does mean that Bitcoin can go up here, and you're probably likely to see a bounce because it is still in a range until you break 107.2k, which is the final confirmation of this being a distribution. It is still trading between 107 and 124, so you've got to expect that to continue. And when you're at the lower end of the range, that's when you potentially look for bounces. And of course, we've had a crazy day, don't get me wrong. This wick went down to 101k on Bybit perpetual futures and 107k on Coinbase. So we got massive disparities between the spot market, the futures market. Leverage got wiped completely on the futures market, so that catalyzed a lot of this move down. It's a big factor being that it was a lack of liquidity in the markets. More so on altcoins, you see huge wicks on coins like Atom, coins like Sui, Ondo. They've got massive downside wicks, which just show a lack of liquidity in the books on those coins and too much interest that put them at too high a price for when any flush that arrived led to those order books being empty. So it's interesting what we can see on Bitcoin because it is the king. It is the asset that has the most liquidity, and it is going to be the one to have your eye on. Now, I know alts on the day are up, but that's only because they're super, super down. When it comes to Bitcoin, what I'm looking at here is if we go to something like the low time frame, what are we seeing? Something even like the 5 minute. You have an order block over here, which was the last green candle that led to the liquidation flush. This has since held as resistance over here, and I'd expect that to continue. But if bulls can actually get above this zone, then you're looking at a move to start filling in some of the gaps higher. Now, while we're below it, expect it to reject as it has been, because this is a very key level. This is where bulls last stepped in before a huge liquidation across the entire market. So expectations would be for a rejection, but if you can flip it, that signals that, okay, we can now potentially have a really inefficient move up, the same way we had an inefficient move down. So let's zoom out a bit. We take it to the 1 hour. That zone is as follows. So it's between 114.2 and 115K. Above here, look at all of this gap you have. That's why if you can see price trade above here, whether it's in the coming days or weeks, likely leads to a fast move back towards at least 119.5. But if we look at something like the 4 hour, it will offer us a clearer picture on more conservative targets where you have an overall gap that's formed over here. And we can look at this as an entire FVG. So this is a fair value gap. On your lower time frames, you have this as your order block resistance. So order block on the 5 minute, and this is your FVG on the 4 hour time frame. So this is what I'm looking at here on Bitcoin. Now expectations from here. Sorry guys, losing my voice here. Recording so many videos. If you enjoy these updates, make sure to smash a subscribe, like, and comment. I'm going to try keep my voice so we can do altcoin analysis later on today. But this is most likely what you're going to be expecting from here. So let's actually grab that candle there. It's just going to be chop from here. And it's not actually the best example. Something like just this is probably what you're going to expect in the coming days, where you just see chop, chop, traders get long, they get short, they get long, they get short, and that's going to lead to a bunch of indecision. You just had a huge volatile move, so everyone expects volatility to immediately come again, and expectations of volatility dampens volatility. But this would be your ideal scenario. So we've got this H4 FVG. Let's say the high of today finishes here. This is where I'd have my H4 FVG marked out if the high does close there. And the best path that you'd want to look for, the most bullish path, would be for price to just now chop while holding above 107.2K, like this green path here. That can then lead to a move where we can start to fill in some of these gaps once we start seeing closes into that H4 FVG and on the lower time frames above that 5 minute order block. Now, alternatively, if we do actually start to break down a little bit, you just want to see 107.2K hold. Again, you don't want daily closes below that because that potentially is then going to confirm distribution, which would then be more akin to something like the red path. So green path, got orange path, more of a bleed, but then eventually bouncing and forming that higher low. Or we've got this red path idea where closes below 107.2K actually could lead to some sort of distribution being likely. And then you're not sure really if price is going to go just down from there and keep nuking. I wouldn't expect that as my scenario because really, what can smart money do here? It's so easy for smart money to rally price up back towards 118.4K, back towards even 120K, or this value area high at 119.2K. We can get it on the chart here. It's just a no-brainer for them to do this. It's anywhere in this area between 118.4 to, let's say, 120K, because even if we then sell off from there, what happens? Well, everyone sees this wick. They see Bitcoin went down to 101K. We're now trading at 112. So then if you get the green path or like the orange path, one price starts rising and rising. Now it's at 117, it's at 118, and people saw it just a day ago was at 103. They're going to be like, oh my God, why didn't I buy? Why didn't I buy the dip? Why didn't I buy the dip? They're going to lose their mind. They're going to FOMO in. They're going to be like, oh, we're so back. Everyone on Twitter is going to be like, how many times do I have to tell you to buy when the markets are red? You're going to get all of that shilling. And that shilling helps smart money generate more exit liquidity because then people FOMO in at 117, 118. They're like, oh, we're so back. That was just a shakeout. And then, of course, smart money can simply just distribute again from wherever that comes. And then you can see the next sell-off and potential later move in the coming weeks. But more on that in the weekly outlook tomorrow. I do a high time frame view. Also, early hours of this morning, I dropped a very high time frame view of Bitcoin. That's why I'm keeping it low time frame today. So I do think a bounce on Bitcoin is going to be the most likely move due to those smart money dynamics. It's just easy for them to generate more exit liquidity because you're going to make people flip-flop. Everyone's getting absolutely bearish here saying bull market's over, and it may well be. Don't get me wrong, high time frame signs are showing a top until you can break above the all-time high again, above this 124.5k, get above there, then sure, bull market's back on. And we can look for a move to potential new highs. But until then, everyone's saying it's over, and that doesn't mean you can't still have bounces to generate more and more exit liquidity. So I'll be looking at this where green path, while we're below the FVG, 4 hour, expect it to chop, consolidate, churn positions, make people flip-flop. And then once we start closing within it, closing above that M5 order block on the lower time frames, I'd expect a quick move up between 113.2 up to 118.4 to fill in this gap over here. That's going to make everyone question themselves. And then from there, potentially we reverse, potentially we go higher to attack some of the highs. I'm not sure. But expectations is for volatility to squeeze, get boring for a few days, chop people up, make them make bad decisions, essentially. And time-wise, of course, it's most likely going to look a lot more like this to be more accurate. Of course, orange path is if we need to actually just go lower a little bit first and do the same thing from lower. So chop, low volatility consolidation down here between 107 and really 110k. And then again, once you start closing into these order blocks in FVG, that's when you can expect that move up to 118.4. And then bearish scenario is losing 107.2k. We then have to look at this and say, okay, daily closes below 107.2k. This is now potentially shaping up as distribution because you're closing below the lows. But until then, we're at range low support. Until we close below 107.2, that's going to be your key pivot level now from here. The same way 124.5k is your key pivot level to the upside. Break above there, sure, we're back on. It's fine. We can get some great trades in and continue the momentum because that's going to show that this was just a shakeout. And the same regard, break below here. That's going to lead to momentum down because now all of the longs that built up within this range are underwater. That confirms its distribution. Smart money used this range to sell and fill their orders, generate exit liquidity, and that's closing below the low of the range, below where we tried to fake out. So that's going to lead to continuation lower exactly the same way. Breaking above where we failed to break out leads to continuation higher. So that's what I'd be looking at. We are at the value area low. So this is the area where you'd expect price to just chop around, consolidate. If we can close within that gap, expect a quick move up. And then from there, probably reverses. If not, sure, you can get that scenario where you move up to resistance, just play it level by level. And then this path can also play out from lower, of course. We just chop. But again, the trigger is as soon as we start closing into this FVG, I'd look at that gap to fill pretty quickly. And I'd be looking on lower time frames to see a setup to take a momentum long into that. And then below 107.2, that's when you're cautious and you really need to reclaim it ASAP, otherwise breakdown likely imminent. So that's the full Bitcoin update, what I'd be looking at. Now, of course, again, check out yesterday's update because this is high time frame bearish. This is a high time frame top until that gets invalidated. You just have to accept it for what it is. But low time frames are still within the range, still have some bounces. And from there, you're just looking to see what breaks next. Is it 107.2K or is it 124.5K? Above equals can mark up, below equals can mark down. That's what you're looking at. And until then, you trade the range, trade the mean reversion, and mean reversion states that once you have a big inefficient move down, you're looking for a retracement to start filling in some of these gaps over here. And again, want to get above that resistance box over here on the 5-minute, start accepting in the 4-hour FVG, flip this box over here, you're looking to a move to trade higher. Break down, then you just want to see 107.2K hold. So don't get chopped up. Remember, if you did get liquidated, lose a lot of money, now's the best time to build a system, start trading professionally, stop the gambling, the bad habits, learn trading the right way, managing risk, because you should never get liquidated in the markets. That should be impossible. You should always have a stop loss. You should always have a risk per trade allocated, where days like yesterday, sure, you might have a loser, but it's just like any other losing trade. It's not catastrophic and blowing you up, because you have to survive in the bull market if you want to be around in the beautiful bear market phase where the generational opportunities are made. And that's where 90% of your gains get brought in a bull run. But to make it to there, to survive to there, is your number one job as a trader. If you can't survive, you're out of the game. No matter how good you are, no matter how good you could potentially be, if you can't manage your risk, you will never find out. So forget about the number you've lost from today. Build plans, build back-tested systems. I teach it all, so feel free, drop me a message. Hope you guys enjoyed the update. Remember, subscribe, like, comment, help me boost the video if you enjoy it, and I'll drop altcoin analysis later on and weekly outlook tomorrow night for a high time frame update of the bull market. Got a banger lined up for you, loads of alpha, diving into all of the data and a lot more on the wider altcoin market.